the way that our human mind is created, it's meant to release things that are not important and to process things that are important. However, because we are so busy going, thinking, watching, and especially with social media now, holy moly, my friends, where if you ever have a down moment, you can't.
Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO.
Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. How you doing? Good seeing you, my friends. You know what time it is. It's time. It is time. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole. Now, I don't know. I always joke whether we need some theme music or whether I need like a announcer's voice going, "Please welcome to the podcast, Dr. Eric Cole." Right? I actually can, in person, or I guess with AI, we don't even need a real person, right? We can create whatever person we want. I know the things are getting pretty wild with artificial intelligence. Before I get into today's topic, which is really about alignment and being more than a CISO, it's not just a job, right? It's a mission, it's a purpose, it's a focus, it's your life. Right? And I'll just sort of want to really get into that because that's been a theme that's been coming up. But before that, I was like just asking a few questions and checking in and seeing how you're doing. So let's start with a simple one. How are you doing? How are things going? Remember, I know this is a video, one-way communication, but I'm on social. I check our comments. So if there's things that I can help you with, if you have questions, if you want to work with me in any sort of capacity, I have group coaching, individual coaching. I work with companies, so lots of options. So if there's things I can do to help make your life better, your career better, then please reach out. Please let me know. But otherwise, what if every day, this is a fun little exercise that in the beginning, you sort of think it's a little silly, but I find that it's probably one of the most powerful transformation tools. Every morning when you wake up, just sit down for 10 minutes with a piece of paper or an iPad, but it has to be either writing or typing because you want to engage multiple senses. So either writing or typing. I prefer writing. I'm old school, but I know some people like digital. But just sit there and each morning, right at the top, how are you doing? Take a deep breath and just write or type whatever comes to mind. Because here's one of the craziest things. The way that our human mind is created, it's meant to release things that are not important and to process things that are important. However, because we are so busy going, thinking, watching, and especially with social media now, holy moly, my friends, where if you ever have a down moment, you can't. Because what we used to do is if we had 15 minutes between a meeting or 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here, we would actually just sit, sort of decompress, sort of be with our thoughts, do some processing, have some what I call thinking time or transitional time, and that is critical. But now with smartphones and social media and everything else, we've basically programmed or built habits where now if there's 5 minutes or 10 minutes between meetings, we're sitting there and we're checking and looking. And so we're constantly bombarding ourselves with information and doing and performing and providing information and solving problems, but we never give ourselves time to just listen. We have a lot to say. And in many cases, saying it is enough to release it. Have you ever heard somebody where you have a friend who's going through a hard time and you're like, just come on over, just come on over and we'll sit down and just let them talk. You don't really say a whole lot. You might ask a question or two, but they're just talking for 20 or 30 minutes. And afterwards, they say the famous phrase, I feel so much better now that I got that off my chest. And it's just sort of a phrase that we say, but let's really go into that. Off my chest. What we don't realize is when there's things that we're concerned or we don't know about or things that happened and we don't give ourselves a chance to release it or let it go, it actually does build pressure in our body. It actually does sort of weigh on your chest. So there's a lot of truth to that statement that just releasing or letting it go is a great way to feel so much better, just getting it off your chest. Now, if you have friends all the time, you can do that, but why can't you be your own best friend? Why can't you be your own best coach? Why can't you be your own best counselor? So what if every morning, you just went in and had a coaching session? 30 minutes. In the beginning, see how long. Some people, it's a little hard. They take 10 or 15 minutes. But the thing is, it shouldn't be stressful. It should be free flow. Your mind wants to talk. It wants to release and get rid of things. It's just not used to doing it. So it feels very uncomfortable. It's not that you don't know what to do. It's that you've never done it. But the natural state of how a human is, it's we're supposed to bring in, process, and release. Bring in, process, and release. The problem is we bring in, process, and we don't release. So this simple exercise of 30 minutes a day where you just sit down and say, how are you doing? And just start typing. Just start writing. Here's the cool part. No judgment. No one's judging you. This is not about solving a problem. And I want to be clear here because most of us are about solving problems. That's what humans are. Humans are problem-solving machines. So we want to always solve a problem. But sometimes you have to recognize the way to solve the problem is by listening. That's the solution. And not just with being a world-class CISO, but in all areas of your life, if you just follow that simple advice, sometimes the problem is just to listen. And you'll find, whether it's family, kids, coworkers, or others, that a lot of times if you just sat there and listened, that's all they wanted. They don't want feedback from you. They don't want details. They don't want more options. All they want to do is get it off their chest. And your sole job in solving the problem is being that receiver. Now, paper, iPads, and others can also be the receiver. You just need to get it out. And it's crazy, but trust me, it works. So just 30 days, every day, 30 minutes, and trust me, don't tell me you don't have 30 minutes because just don't do social media, don't do it, right? You can easily find 30 minutes. You and I both know that's simple and easy. So just sit there and say, how are you doing? And just let yourself go. Don't judge. Don't try to solve a problem. Don't try to brainstorm. Just whatever comes to mind, just let it out. Release it. And you'll find now you're starting the day with a clean sheet of paper because you're waking up in the morning and there's all this stuff on your mind. How are you really going to be focused and productive and show up to be the best CISO you could possibly be if you're preoccupied with all these other thoughts? So doing this exercise each morning lets you go in and release and get rid of those thoughts. So now you're starting the day fresh and ready to go. Now I know all of you are overachievers, right? You're all about living a life of abundance. So you're probably going, okay, Eric, but wouldn't it also make sense to release and let go before you go to bed so you're not carrying that stuff? Oh, yeah, now we're cranking, baby. I got to get a little mixing board up here so we can get some background music going on my podcast. That's sort of next level. I always listen to other podcasts. I'm always learning, and I find you don't even realize it, but most other podcasts, I guess what they call high end, they have music going. You don't even realize it because you just drown it out, but there's always sort of music going. So I'm like, maybe we need to add a little hip hop music going on in there. But yeah, now we're cranking it up. Did you ever think that maybe the reason why you wake up tired is because you never gave yourself a chance to rest? Because here's the reality. Sleeping is about resting, not solving problems. And here's the reality. Your unconscious mind is always going. So if you're going to bed with all these problems and all these issues, and it's just like, I just need to get this off my chest, but I can't, and it's just built inside, you're just going in and revisiting those things while you're sleeping. Your unconscious mind is just revisiting those over and over and just creating lots of stress factor. That's why people will sometimes get a good night's sleep and they're tired. They'll get 7 to 8 hours sleep and they're like, why am I so tired? And it's because you didn't actually rest. And this is also why people that are in high stress situations sleep a lot, because essentially there's no release. So they're just burning fuel so quick, all their body's trying to do is just survive. All their energy is going to thinking they have no energy to walk, eat, or do anything else. So they just lay in bed because you're essentially burning your fuel so quick. You don't have any energy to do the basic things like getting up, walking around, brushing your teeth, and going to work. So another great trick is before you go to bed, ask yourself that question. How was my day? Now notice, it's a very generic question. There's nothing reading into it. You don't want to ask questions like, why did today suck? Or why was today a bad day? Or why was I so frustrated? Because you're then sort of presupposing that things are bad. So it's neutral. All this exercise is about is just releasing. That's the problem. We're not trying to come up with any other problem. The problem we're trying to solve is your body needs to release thoughts it no longer needs, and you need to give it an opportunity to do that. So just 30 minutes journaling before you go to bed. And what you'll find is when I started doing this, you don't need melatonin or sleep medicines or any of that other prescription stuff. The best sleep medicine is two things. One, getting rid of what you don't need. So you're going to bed relaxed and in a state of ease. The reason why many people can't go to bed is because your mind is sitting going, but we got all the stuff. And you're like, leave it. No, but we got all the stuff. And if you just said, okay, tell it to me. Just talk to me. Talk to me, and let's go in and just get it out. All you want to do is release it. You're not doing anything else, just releasing it. That simple act solves most problems of just releasing the energy. And then you go to sleep. Second best sleep medicine is, it sounds crazy, give yourself permission. So before I go to sleep, I say, I give myself permission to release and let go of things that are not serving me. And after I do that, I say, thank you. And I now give myself permission to have a peaceful, beautiful, restful night's sleep. And it's so crazy. But remember, there's still a part of us that is used to schooling. Remember, for a good part of our lives, for 20 to 25 years of our life, if not longer, we had to ask permission to go to the bathroom. Think of how crazy that is. Think of what that does to a human. For the first 18 years of their life, for them to do something that is needed and required to survive, going to the bathroom, you have to raise your hand And somebody has to tell you that it is okay for you to go to the bathroom. That is insane. That's crazy. Crazy. It's nuts. But it is what it is. And that's how we've been programmed. So we are very much focused on we need permission. So it's the craziest thing, but I do this with a lot of my coaching clients. These are CISOs. Imagine a 45, 50-year-old CISO, well accomplished, making over $1 million a year in salary and bonus. And one of the best pieces of advice is, I say, give yourself permission to do X. Give yourself permission to do, because they're not used to doing it. I'm teaching them new things that they need to do. And I'm like, give yourself permission to talk in the board meeting. Give yourself permission to knock on your CEO's door without an appointment and just say, hey, I got a quick question for you. You got 2 minutes? Because guess what? That's how chief officers work. That's how chief officers operate. Because they're colleagues and working together, and colleagues don't have to schedule meetings. Colleagues don't have to go through an EA. That's for outsiders. Colleagues that are in the inner circle, they just knock on doors and talk to folks. They don't go through that formality. But for some reason, CISOs go in and they act like a regular employee and not a chief officer. And guess what? That's why they're not treated like one. So give yourself permission to behave like a chief officer. Give yourself permission to go and knock on the door without an appointment and see if you can talk to them for 2 to 3 minutes. Give yourself permission. So that's sort of the motivational piece of this. And it actually ties in to where I'm going with this topic of being a CISO is more than a job, around aligning your life with what you love to do and your purpose. And it's give yourself permission to live. Give yourself permission to focus on who you want to be. So what I'm noticing more and more, because I'm all about recognizing patterns. That's what makes me so good at coding, programming, hacking, security, life, and all those factors, is because essentially you'll notice patterns. You'll notice people that have certain programs running operate in a certain way. And people that have different programs running operate in a different way. So here's what I do. I go in and I look at CISOs that are wildly successful, happy, and loving life. And I look at CISOs that are not, and I start to loosely put them into categories and say, okay, what are the programs that are running that allow this group to be wildly successful? And what are the programs that allow this group to not be successful? And I'm just looking for the patterns so I can go in, because if you can figure out the program that's causing the issue, you can then go in and reprogram. What's the hardest part of programming? Finding out where the problem is. Finding out where the bug is. Well, when I used to debug code when I was a programmer, and many of you who are programmers know this, is it could take you days or weeks to find the problem. Once you did, you typically could fix it in 2 to 3 hours, right? And the same thing when I was in college. I remember when my program didn't work, it was like, oh, because you had no idea how you could be up all night. You could be take 4 to 5 days, because finding the problem was the hard part. So if we could find patterns to identify the problem, we can fix it a lot easier. So here's what I noticed. World-class CISOs that are wildly successful and love life have alignment between their job, their family, and who they are. And CISOs that aren't are in misalignment. So let me put it another way. The way I look at most people is most people have three different programs that are running, or three different personalities, or if you want to get a little weird or crazy, there's three different identities within you. Most people have an identity at work, an identity at home, and an identity of their best version of themselves that's trying to get out, but's been buried by all these limiting beliefs. So imagine you have these three different personalities all sort of working and struggling. And you've probably seen this come up where sometimes you're at home and depending on how old your kids are or your significant other, they might come up to you and go, can you just leave work at work? Can you stop being work Eric? And can you be father Eric or husband Eric? And I don't know if anyone's told you that, right? You can tell I've been told that a few times. But what that's basically saying is there's misalignment. At work, you need to be one type of person. At home, you need to be a different type of person. And then there's your ideal self that's trying to overcome all those limiting beliefs and be the true version of yourself. But crazy. What if you can merge those? What if you can have alignment so there's not three versions but one? So now there's a single version with a single purpose. So now, whether you're at work, at home, or just by yourself, you're very clear on your mission, your purpose, and you have total and complete alignment. So yes, at work, you typically do work things. At home, you do home things, right? So I'm not saying they're the same, but what I'm saying is the way you think, the way you approach, and the way you're aligned is all in a parallel path with one simple, single question. What is your purpose? Why are you here? What's important to you? And you hear this with folks, and I think it's important for you to get clear on this. What are your priorities? Because here's where the misalignment happens. If from 8 to 5, work is your top priority, then from, and I'm just making up times just to illustrate this, then from 5 to 6 when you drive home, you, spirit, God, higher power, right, whatever you want to call it, is number one because you're just sort of with yourself. And then from 6 to 10, your family is a higher priority. You're out of alignment. Because depending on the time of the day, you have different priorities. Now, how confusing is that going to be? Imagine if you were a kid, and this happens, and this is why kids get so confused, and your parents are like, okay, when you're at home, you can act this way. When you're at school, you have to act this way. When we go to a friend's house, you have to act this way. Oh, but when you go to church, you have to act another. And it's like, why don't we just teach our kids to show up as their authentic self? Well, why don't we just teach kids to show up a single way? But if you have to constantly remember which version am I supposed to be, or which priority is important now, it's going to mess you up, right? You're not going to do well. And this is why so many CISOs struggle, because if at work 9 to 5, your priority is work. If something happens with your family, your initial response is ignore it. But the reality is you can't. So then you have to go and deal with the family issues, but then you're feeling guilty because you're saying, well, that shouldn't be my priority, but it is. You're creating a conflict, and conflict always creates stress in the body. But question, what if there was total alignment? What if you basically said, and you can create whatever priority, but what if you said 24/7, me and my creator, my higher power is number one. So taking care of me is number one priority. Family is number two, and work is number three. And you just make that very clear. Right? You just make that very clear to everyone. Listen, when you're taking a job going, I'm going to give you 100%. I'm going to focus and do what you need me to do. But I just want to be very clear to you that taking care of myself and my personal beliefs and connection with higher power, that's number one. So if you're going to ask me to work on a day that I believe is a holiday, then I'm not going to show up. So I just want you to know that. Second priority is my family. If something happens with my kids or something happens with my family members, I'm going to leave work to deal with it. And then third, if those two are taken care of, which my plan is that they are from 8 to 5, then work will be my priority. But I just want you to recognize that there are other priorities so there's no confusion. And I know this for some people seems crazy, but why aren't we being open and honest with ourselves, with our bosses, and with everyone else around us? What if we were super clear? I think if you go up to most people in my life and you ask what my priorities are, they're pretty clear. They're pretty consistent. And they're pretty aligned with what I just said. So there's no confusion now. Now there's total and complete alignment, because now how I do my job, how I show up as a CISO, and how I show up at home and how I show up in other places is all aligned. There's one single version of you, and there's one set of priorities. So take some time this week, and let me give a couple hints here. If I'm saying this and you're like, he's crazy, he's nuts, I'm not going to watch it. I thought Eric was a cool dude, but he's definitely off his rocker. Whenever you get defensive, that is a really good indicator that you know what you're hearing is true, but you don't want to fix it. Ouch. Ooh, right? I always told you I love you, I care about you, but I don't hold back punches. Right? I don't hold back punches. So just recognize, and this is true in all areas of your life. If something happens that really bothers you or triggers you, it's never the other person. There's something inside of you that they said or did that basically said, that is true, but I don't want to recognize that it's true. I don't want to try to change because I think it's too painful to change. So instead, I'm just going to get mad, angry, or stop watching their videos. So triggers or things that get you upset are never, ever, ever, ever about the other person. They're always about you. So just always keep that in mind. So whether this hit you or didn't hit you, spend some time this week just going in and saying, what are my true priorities? Be honest. Now, my recommendation is do this with me, myself, and I. Don't share this with anybody else immediately, because you want to give yourself permission. Right, let's learn what we did earlier. Give yourself permission to be open and honest. Just sit down and say, I give myself permission to be open and honest. What are really my priorities in my life right now? And guess what? Depending on where you are, what you're doing, and what your dreams and aspirations are, work might be. I know some people disagree, going, no, your priorities must always be this. Who are you to tell me what my priorities should be? And that's when I always laugh when they're like, your priorities must be, but it's like, no. You just need to be aware and own it and make sure everyone around you is aligned with it. If you want your number one priority to be work, your number two priority to be family, and your number three priority to be you, that's okay for a season. Now remember, anytime you have something not as priority one, there's always going to be repercussions. So in that case, you might wear yourself out a little bit, but you might say, listen, for the next 6 months, because of either what's happened with the economy or anything else, I need to provide for my family. I need to go and bring in as much money as possible for 6 months and 6 months only. So for the next 6 months, I'm readjusting my priorities. I'm making that clear to everyone around me. They're in agreement with it, or at least they know, and that's the plan. So there's nothing wrong with changing or modifying your priorities throughout your life as long as you do 3 things. 1, you are aware of them and you communicate them to those around you. 2, you realize that there could be repercussions. There's positive and negative repercussions, and you're aware of the pros and cons and recognize and accept them. And 3, it's for a set period of time. What causes people to get into trouble is when they readjust their priorities for a short period of time, but they do it indefinitely. And that's where many people are. If you're right now incongruent or misaligned as a CISO, you're struggling at work because you're always thinking at home, and at home you're always thinking about work because you have mixed priorities and you're not clear on what those priorities were. My bet is if you go back 5, 10, 15, 20 years, there was an initial reason of why you did this, and it made sense at the time, but it was only meant for a period of time, and you allowed it to happen indefinitely. So if you want to be a world-class CISO, you must have one set of priorities that are clear and focused, recognizing pros and cons for a set period of time, and communicate that to everyone around you. In my opinion, me or no one else can tell you whether your priorities are right or wrong. All we can tell you is you need to be true to yourself, you need to be aligned, and you need to recognize that this is for a season, and make sure you're very clear about when that season ends and when you might need to reshift or rechange your priorities.